allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everybody, so the first item of business is to enter into executive session so that the public knows we will be returning to regular session at the conclusion of that approximately around 6:30 p.m., although we can never be quite sure of the exact time. So perhaps I can turn to...
You got me upset.
I know.
Just check.
We're going to look for a motion to enter into executive session. Trustee Secretary is conjured.
Madam Chairman, I would move that we enter into executive session at 5:32 p.m. pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, subparagraph A2, conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Unit A, grievance. Executive session to include school committee, the school committee, Superintendent Kirk Downing, Ms. Anne Marie Stoica, Kevin Keaveney, Leah Cohen, grievance, Jennifer McGrew, Victor Rosado, and James Kobialaka. The committee will reconvene in open session.
And I do so declare, so I will second that. Any discussion?
There is some discussion on my part. I would only ask during the executive sessions of the chair, because a lot of people are going to be here, just make sure they identify themselves when they speak, and that they identify everyone as they come in. So I just want everyone to include identification everybody for the minutes. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So we'll do the roll call vote. We'll start with Dana.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Amy Vessels.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Sharon.
Yes.
And Shantor.
Yes.
And Jim.
Yes.
And Mike, we are just moving to enter into executive session.
Great.
And so Mike Korish votes.
Yes.
Fantastic. So thank you very much. We will contact Nikki afterwards. Now, we are moving on to citizens' comments, and I would actually like to just hold on 1 second to make sure that there are no citizens in the hallway.
Or even administrators.
Right, right. Yep.
Or student representatives.
No, they hopefully are. Do I, by the way, just got all of your texts about traffic.
We all texted you?
Anyone can text. Yeah, wow, it was so weird. There was like a police. It was a police car.
Well, I thought this was typical rush hour, was it not typical?
No,
rush
this
hour?
is worse. This is much worse.
It was
Jackie,
right,
before
it
we
was
start,
right at the traffic light, right
Were you a
over
little
at
warm
1
on
o'clock.
Monday night?
That's
And
on the
there
blue
was a
lights.
couple of police cars and a tow truck.
You looked like you could take a police because it was so damn hot
It
in
was
that
awful.
light. It was unbearable.
It was awful.
Were you
These
stifling?
items are not on
Oh,
the
yeah.
agenda.
We're all on camera.
I know.
These items are not on the agenda.
Is the air conditioning broken over there yet?
Sharon.
We found those.
Hi guys. Welcome.
The first thing, yeah. I swear.
Thank you for coming.
The first thing I can hear is there's snacks down the hall.
How are you? Thanks.
Well, I was kidding about that.
Yeah, I Lots of guests finally in. Thank you very much.
Yeah. This was. Always for food, yes.
I saw you on Look at all the people you were trying to exclude from the
So are there any citizens in the gallery who would like to speak? Any citizens' comments? So we're going to move beyond that in our agenda here, and we're going to go over to approving the consent agenda. I'll turn to Joe for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move to approve the consent agenda of May 8, 2024, and the draft meeting minutes of April 24, 2024, and the warrants of May 10, 2024.
I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion about the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Looks unanimous. Are any abstentions? Any opposed? Okay, so Mike abstains. So moving on to the school committee chairperson update. I don't have anything that is already in the agenda, so let's keep on moving on to our student representative.
You have 3 announcements today. As the chair.
Okay, so he tells me how to do my job. Thanks. All right. So I was going to do it at a different time, but there's no time like the present. So let me present to our student representative, to Hansi. Hansi, I am going to struggle to get to you. Can you get to me? Come on up, girl. Come get your present. This is in celebration of Hansi's service to the Neshoba Regional Public Schools. And so,
You gotta pull it out, Hansi.
yeah, let's see what you got. Show us your sweat.
She's camera shy.
Oh, the camera loves her though.
God, Martha's been so cute. Thank you. Yeah, I know.
With Eastern Huskies.
Thank you all.
So Hansi, we're so grateful to your service. You have been an amazing, not only representative, but also role model. And kind of helping us understand what's happening in our high school and really helping us keep close to the student body. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you all for having me the past 2 years as well.
I would turn it up to the committee as well. If anybody wants to say anything? Or did I cover it?
I would love to.
Go ahead.
Hansi, you've been amazing, not just in our meetings, but also at school. And you've been a great connection for me to the student body through STUCO, through your administrators and teachers. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
So
It means
thank you
a
for
lot.
all you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to hear from you though, but let's have your student report. What's going on, ladies?
So a few weeks ago, our junior class took a field trip to Providence where we saw the play Fences, and over 180 staff and students went. We took up the whole theater. And it was a book that was read in all the English classes. This Saturday is the junior prom at Mechanics Hall in Worcester. And next Saturday is the Relay for Life. All proceeds will go to the American Cancer Society. We would also like to extend our congratulations to senior Tyler Mignot for earning a position on the Massachusetts Scholastic Express as 2024 All-State High School Journalism staff.
We have some exciting things planned for the seniors. On the 22nd, we have a senior sunset and an outdoor movie night. Raising Cane's and Sandy's will be providing the food. And then on the 28th is our annual senior breakfast in a field day this year. Parents' breakfast followed by lawn games with a slip and slide, a dunk tank, and an ice cream truck. And then on June 6th, a senior banquet at Devon's Commons with graduation at 9. Neshoba DECA competed at the International Career Development Conference last week in Anaheim, California. Neshoba had our largest group ever of students attending. Winston and Brennan, 2 of our juniors, competed in the Franchise Business Plan category, reaching the finals, which earned them a top 20 finish in the world. This is the 3rd consecutive trip to ICDC for both Winston and Brennan as a team, a new school record. Also reaching the finals were Lily St. Martin and Grayson Edwards in the Hospitality and Tourism Operations Research category. That's all we have tonight.
It's quite a bit. So thanks, guys. And Hansi, it's been our absolute pleasure. Ava, we are so grateful that you are hopefully going to carry the torch beyond and continue to be a mentor also. So we wish you the very, very best of luck. And maybe you can keep us updated on what's going on as you head down to the big city.
Definitely. Thank you all again.
All right. So you guys are free to go if you like.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So now we're going to go on to the superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to Kirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee for having us today. Included in your meeting materials, we have a few announcements, and then the strategic update is the superintendent's summative evaluation. So the preschool director position, if you will harken back to January 17th at the presentation of the budget, we prescribed the preschool model. With the passing of the budget from the town of Bolton and the town of Lancaster, we know that successful passage of the budget by 2 of our towns puts us into a position where we can do actual planning for next year. So while the voting of the budget by this committee essentially endorsed that position, I think it's prudent to provide you with that job description and to also redo that again next week as we come forward. So that's all part of the preschool director process we talked about in the budget season. And this is, the preschool director will function very much like a principal in terms of supervision and evaluation of staff, of managing the budget and forecasting enrollments and staffing and all those needs. So it very much is a parallel position in the form of a preschool director. Next is it's that annual time where we approve the district physician contract. So that's provided to you. I engaged with Dr. Coleman earlier this week. He's very satisfied that we continue to have that contract on an annual fee of $5,000. So thank you to Dr. Coleman for that. And we'll be bringing that forward for a vote as well. And the last announcement, I want to turn it over to Ross Mulcairn, our Director of Finance and Operations, to give you an RFP update for food service.
And thank you for the opportunity to provide the school committee with an update on the RFP for food services this evening. Again, this is a director position only. The district received 3 proposals from reputable companies prior to submission. All 3 companies attended a mandatory pre-proposal conference, completed site tours of our kitchens, and submitted any questions for clarification in their preparation for proposals. Last Thursday, the team tasked with evaluating RFPs met to review the technical or non-price proposals. But we still have work to do in our evaluations before moving on to reviewing the price proposals. As a reminder, this shift to our district employed will not impact our district employed kitchen staff, and we thank the kitchen managers, in addition to our office coordinator and parent representative who have been able to serve on the evaluation team and will continue to do so as we make our decision. We'll provide a further update and a contract for approval at the May 22nd school committee meeting. And then lastly, just as a quick add-on with regards to food services, we've been having an agenda item with regards to food service rates for FY25 continue to shift on the agendas. So I've done some research with DESE and other districts. Just as a heads up for the next meeting, we would only be approving meal pricing that would impact when students buy second meals, and the pricing for adult meals, which is applicable when a staff member purchases a meal. As a reminder, the first meal for any student is provided under the Universal Schools Meals Policy set by the state and supported through the state budget. We'll have proposed rates for approval at the next school committee meeting. I did consider having our food service director position filled prior to talking about this and thinking about doing a cost analysis with them. However, I think it's prudent to do an approval, and then if they feel like something needs to be changed during the next school year, we can do so. Otherwise, we'd look at our next change for FY26.
Well, looks like that's it for the superintendent's report. I have a quick question for you guys, and it's on the food service rates. Did you say that you're going to bring that proposal to us on the 22nd?
Correct.
And then we're going to vote on that at the June 5th meeting?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on the superintendent report? All right, that's fantastic. So let's keep going. On the agenda, next is new business. We're going to head over to, we have quite a bit of new business here, my friends. Not grades 9 through 12 science curriculum review report is going to be shared.
And at this point, I want to recognize Assistant Superintendent Laura Friend to introduce the team.
Okay. So I would like to welcome Candace McCurdy, Linda Pierre, and Dr. Kate Boynton to the table to help present.
Out of my skill set. This is in PDF format. So.
I have a slideshow if you want me to drive in.
Do you want to? Great. That's what's up. That's as much as you get.
Perfect. Look at us. There we go.
Now, if I can do this, come on. Okay. You're connected again. I won't touch it. Move away from the cord.
Thank you. I'd just like to, compliment Ms. McCurdy and introduce Ms. McCurdy actually to the committee. Ms. McCurdy is our curriculum director for math and science and has been working really, really hard this year with our math and science educators, and has been working in tandem with Linda Pierre, who is our high school science department head. And I'd like to thank both of you for all of your work so far to date with phase 1 of our curriculum review cycle. This is a new process for the high school in particular, shifting our practice from thinking about just replacing textbooks to shifting our thinking about instructional vision for the kinds of learning experience we want for students in the classroom, thinking about what's working and where there are potential areas for improvement. And I continue to give kudos to Ms. Pierre for saying she's the tip of the spear for the high school in the work. So thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. You have a family and saying for spending time tonight. Thank you for talking about the we're anticipating on providing over to the committee. I pulled out it's more information presentation, so no message. Until next steps for phase 2 as we enter into next year. And so again, just a review of our curriculum review process. We're going to share with you the action steps that we have just about completed for phase 1 and what the department is recommending for phase 2. And then we'll open it up to any questions that the committee may have. As a reminder, our curriculum review cycle and our curriculum review process is tightly interwoven into our strategic plan. As a reminder of that connection, we've created this slide for you here. Curriculum review process is constructed in 5 phases. We've reviewed this with the committee, so this slide is really just a reminder of that process, and we've linked the whole curriculum development and review process and schedule, which we continue to work to update in the presentation for you as well. I'm going to turn it over to our curriculum director, Ms. McCurdy, who is going to provide an overview of the timeline, what the team has been doing to date. And I believe Ms. Pierre is going to speak to our student feedback component, and Dr. Boynton is going to speak to our family feedback component, and then it's going to come back around to Ms. McCurdy, who's going to, and Ms. Pierre, who are going to talk about next steps.
Perfect, thank you. Yep. So this year we've conducted phase 1 of the curriculum review. In the fall, we built knowledge as a department of deeper learning and deeper assessment. We collaborated on where the curriculum currently is, and we developed a draft for our vision for the future. Over the winter, we analyzed the current state of the curriculum and courses. We solicited feedback from students via a survey that they took in science class, and from families with a combined survey and thought exchange that was emailed to high school families. We reviewed the feedback, saw how it aligned with the instructional practice priorities, and determined areas for a focus for refinement. And then we also continue to review and refine work that has been done. Next year, we're going to enter phase 2, in which we will analyze and refine course sequencing and offerings, as well as talk about the better communication of this, review what high quality instructional materials are out there using Curate and Ed reports. The department will also conduct site visits, continue to work on curriculum writing and refinement, select materials needed to meet the vision, and prepare for implementation. And then in school year 2025-2026 is when we will enter phase 3 and implement new curricular materials. So as I said, phase 1, we've been spending our time trying to answer these 2 questions. How do our current instructional practices, curricula, and materials support student learning? And what is our instructional vision? So as you can see, there's been a wide variety of work in this phase, including departmental-based work, professional development, site visits, and gathering of student and family feedback. The department has adopted a goal around engagement, and members have participated in DESE's Kaleidoscope Deeper Learning Initiative. And then here's a copy of our vision that was developed. Our vision highlights the types of student learning experiences that we hope to strengthen and create in supporting our students in the area of science now and beyond the Shoah.
And there's a hyperlink on that slide if anyone wanted to look at a larger version. I know I have a hard time reading that full print.
Yes, that was a snippet of the doc. So these are the 3 areas of work that we've been focused on during this phase, and you can see that there's been substantial work around curriculum review and professional development to support that, as well as feedback gathered from our students and families. So I'll now turn it over to our awesome department head, Linda Peer, to talk to you about the student survey.
Thank you. All right, so as you can see, we're looking at the student survey results here. This first slide's nice and easy. The reason we put it in there is you can see we had almost 600 students that took the survey, which is a huge number. And we wanted a good representation. We had every science teacher have the students taking class, so we're happy about those numbers. Really great number. And then, of course, the second one, you can see the following students in certain grades. If you do notice, the only one that kind of stands out, if you look at grade 12, there's 18%. Keep in mind that science is required for 3 years, which you guys already know, so not every senior takes a science class, and then some double up. So they've taken it in, one class and not the other.
And we provided a hyperlink to the student survey so you could see the types of questions that were asked.
All right, so if we take a look at this, you can see here, these are sort of the important elements from a student perspective. So when they walk into science class, this is what they want to see. And there are quite a few here. The top 3, hands-on, which is great because we do labs all the time, so it aligns perfectly with what we're doing, what we're going to continue to do. Real-world schools, relevancy. Those kinds of things. So making sure they can make these connections to what's really happening. Why does this matter to me? So we're trying to work on that a lot. And of course, critical thinking, right? Can you get a problem in front of you and work through it and not just give up or not know how to figure it out? And there are many, many others, as you can see, but those are sort of the top 3, which is what Candace, when you're going to go through the next slide, you'll see have been pulled out. So when you look at this gives us an idea of the percentage of students that answered often or sometimes for these top important elements. You can read the numbers, but we've got 94-ish for the hands-on opportunities, 76-ish for the real-life authentic experiences, almost 90%. Science classes have challenged me to build critical thinking skills, excuse me, and we have about 83% sparking interest in how things work and interact, which is great because that's what the point of science is. So we're pretty happy about that. And then these 3 sort of engagement looks like these topics kept coming up, and it's the hands-on, not just even labs, but doing some sort of work hands-on, discourse, and then, of course, the lab experience. And there's an appendix attached at the end so you can get a better idea. We have actually specific labs that students mentioned that they had in the past, so you can see specific ones. And if you take a look at it, I was pretty happy with the results because all classes are represented. Anatomy came up, biology came up, chemistry and physics, and they weren't told to pick, oh, what's a biology lab that you remembered? It was just, what's a lab you remembered? So it was nice that we got a mix. It wasn't just focused on, oh, just biology came up. So we were happy with those results. These are a few quotes from the students here. I won't read them out, but you can take a look at them. And what I like about this more than anything else is it shows how much students put into their answers. This wasn't just like IK, NA, you know, they really thought about it and really put some time into these answers. And when you read them, you know, as a teacher, I kind of look and go, yeah, you know what I mean? They know what's going on here. So I was thrilled about how seriously they took this. And as Candace can attest to, this is only 3 students. I mean, these kids wrote, like we looked through really looked through the data. It was amazing. These kids had paragraphs. So it was great that they really took this survey seriously, especially because we talk about survey fatigue all the time. You know, we're getting surveys all the time, so for them to sit down and do this and take it seriously was really wonderful. So very happy about that. And an appendix as well with additional information. All right, so the priority areas and students' perspectives. So this is, if you look at, again, this hands-on learning, real-world development of critical thinking skills. These are going to be the ones we're really going to focus on. And you can see to incorporate more hands-on labs and activities that allow students to apply concepts practically and work collaboratively, enhance modes of instruction in each unit. So changing it up a little bit. We're still, you know, we're working on the curriculum now and moving away from that typical, oh, let's have a lecture and then we'll quiz and then we'll do a lab and then we'll test. We're trying to really mix it up a little bit and do some different instruction. Real-world application skills, continue to strengthen real-world connections and relevance by relating concepts to careers, current events, or everyday applications. I think that's supposed to say. For students, yep. And then consider incorporating project-based challenges that allow students to design their own experiments or solutions to real-world problems, promoting creativity and application of knowledge. And then finally, critical thinking skills, work to assess clarity of instructions and guidance for labs and activities, but also include open-ended elements that encourage critical thinking and problem solving. And then continue to strengthen learning environment that encourages students to share ideas, ask questions, participate in discussions, and collaborate. And again, this is all from the students. Like when you read this, that just stuns me that they just beautifully written. Maybe wordsmithed a little bit, but they did a great job.
Thank you. Some solid feedback.
Yes, absolutely.
With constructive feedback, both validating and constructive from the students. Also reinforced by the feedback we received from our families, which Dr. Boynton is going to speak to.
Thank you, Linda. So parents' voices were and thoughts were accessed through the platform Thought Exchange. There was healthy participation and 73 sort of thought conversations. And Thought Exchange, I have not a lot of experience with it, but it allows for a free exchange of ideas where you can respond to one another. If you share a thought, you can respond to a thought. So we had 125 participants, most from Bolton, 50 participants, 41 from Stowe, and 26 from Lancaster. And then they shared the number of children who are currently attending or have attended Neshoba Regional High School and have participated in the high school science program. And most families have one student participating or have participated in the high school science program. And there's a hyperlink to the results, highlights that you can see a little bit more in depth of some of the comments and the exchange. What we really kind of valued from this is that the priorities for families were the same as the priorities for students in a slightly different order, but the top 3 priorities for families for their vision in science was also real-world experiences, hands-on, and critical thinking. So there's alignment there between what parents and caregivers are thinking about their children's science experience and what their children are thinking about their science experience, and we found that really quite valuable. Summary of the family responses. One example there is how important is it to you that the department offer a variety of electives. That was highly important to families. 84% of families answered very important or important for a variety and a rich array of electives. And then suggested electives from the family side of things were environmental science, biotechnology, computer science, and other related fields like marine biology and astronomy. And then some of the best feedback they've heard from their children on any of the science-related courses so far. Again, positive feedback, hearing that there are hands-on learning experiences, engaging teachers, as well as inclusivity and support. And you can see the word cloud there that shares the responses. Thought exchange question: Neshoba Regional High School is planning for the future of science at Neshoba through the curriculum review cycle. We're assessing our current practice and making decisions about next steps, and want to hear from our families. What would you like to see? So this is the question. What would you like to see in a highly engaged, future-ready science class as we strive to prepare our students for the future? So just a really important question. Then an overview through thought exchange. Responses indicated a really strong desire for future-ready science curriculum. Engaging, practical, and relevant are the three strong adjectives there. And family respondents emphasized the importance of open-minded and motivated teachers who promote critical thinking and curiosity. They suggested that curriculum should include real-world applications, connections to future careers, and understanding AI as a tool, and then ending perhaps looking at a change in order of the sciences, updating experiments and examples to reflect recent scientific developments, ensuring equipment and technology are all current. I think with the new building project, that is something that we eye towards as well. Two slides there, some are the highest and lowest rated thoughts generated from the thought exchange. Highest rated thoughts from the participants generally revolved around the importance of hands-on learning. So again, this keeps coming up as a theme: real-world applications and integration of technology in science education. So you see a quote there. And then on the other hand, lowest rated thoughts were often either less specific or expressed uncertainty. As an example, there, one participant simply responded unsure, and it was rated 2B2. Another low rated thought was see previous responses. So those low-rated responses suggest that a participant either didn't have a clear idea of what they wanted to see in science or did not provide enough detail to get a higher rating in the thought exchange. Again, priority areas and family perspective, hands-on learning. One participant proposed hands-on exploratory learning opportunities that allow students to take chances and make mistakes without fear that will impact their final grades. In terms of action steps, potentially incorporating more hands-on learning experiences, analyze and develop grade-level skill progression and criteria for success that's communicated out to students and families. In real-world application of skills, feedback there was participants frequently mentioned the need for real-world application and connections to future careers. One participant suggested that labs that address real-world problems or scenarios to help students understand the practical application of their knowledge, so they can see where science is happening in the real world, and perhaps explore future careers. Action in that category to continue to make connections stronger between hands-on activities and real-life relevance, explore areas of enhancement during curricular work. And then in the development of critical thinking skills, in the feedback there, many participants emphasized the importance of critical thinking, problem solving. And one suggestion was ideation and problem solving, brainstorming sessions, come up with proposals to tackle problems, whether it be something that's seen locally within the Neshoba community or out in a global issue. And action there is to explore the current HQIM for high school science and investigate curricular options that support inquiry and priorities laid out in the instructional vision.
Okay. So while we recognize, while we recognize that there is a lot of great work happening, we also recognize that we are always in a state of continued improvement. And so to that end, here are some of our next steps. As a department, we're going to explore the current high-quality instructional materials that are out there for high school science, investigate curricular options that support inquiry, real-world and hands-on learning, And we will also consider and implement action steps identified on the previous slides that came from student and family feedback.
All right, last 4, further explore science elective offerings. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We're doing that with our curriculum now. Strengthening communication of course offerings and course sequencing. Just a little aside, I wanted to point this one out because what's interesting is if you look at the parent survey with the electives question, parents mentioned 2 elective offerings do offer. So we're wondering, where's the communication gap? Why isn't it that parents don't know? You know, we have it in the program studies, but maybe that's not enough. So we want to make sure we're communicating what is actually being offered and what does that look like to parents. So I just wanted to point that out because that's one that stood out, really stood out to me, that maybe the parents don't know everything that's happening. So I just wanted to throw this aside on that one. Develop recommendations and potential requests for purchase of new curriculum and or resources to support structural vision. Kate had mentioned the new building. I think that's going to kind of help that along. And then engage insight visits where appropriate to other high schools as well as the Neshoba middle schools. Candace and I have started that a little bit. I visited the middle school twice this year. So we're going to try to continue that and maybe get some of our freshman teachers to come down as well, and maybe even have some of the 8th grade teachers come up. So then we have a better view of what, when the kids come to us, we have, a better view of where they're coming from and what we can do to,
And I know you had the privilege of observing an open science lesson.
I did. Yep.
So see that phenomenon-based instruction happening.
I think that's it.
Thank you, science team. And Principal Boynton. Do you guys have any questions on the presentation here for curriculum review?
I do. So once again, I am so impressed by the information, but specifically about what our children are able to say and how insightful they are. And I'm wondering if there's going to be an opportunity for the students to see some of this slide presentation. And the reason that I ask is because I had a conversation with my daughter not too long ago about teachers are asking us, we're taking a survey or they're asking us for information about this, they're asking our opinions in lots of different ways. And she said, but we never hear back, what's happening with that information. And I think that that would be really validating for them to hear how their input impacts what you're doing.
I'm writing it down. Writing it down.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, sure.
So I noticed in the sort of detailed thought exchange from the parents that there were a number of comments about the sequence of the science classes, and I'm maybe reading into their comments a little bit, but I'm wondering, do you think it's clearly articulated like why the sequence is what it is? Do you think the parents that are writing this are reflecting on their science education or
the
what they know?
communication thing. This is what I'm talking about because what happened now, I've been department head forever. So we had, environmental science for years when I started here. And then we switched over to physics, but now we really do physical science. So there's been this change, but I don't think we've communicated it clearly enough. Because another thing that keeps coming up is even the students will say this, well, wait, I took physics freshman year. No, you took physical science freshman year, not physics. So we have to kind of explain that better even to the students and then to the parents as well, because they are sending their kids to school here. They have every right to know why is it that we picked physics first. And we chose physical science. We actually had a teacher who did some doctoral work on it, and then we looked at our whole curriculum and we decided that, this helps kids with skills for every other science class they'll take. So we learn about graphing, and they dipstick a little bit with chemistry, and then they're doing critical thinking skills. So there was a reasoning behind it, but I don't think we got that message out clearly enough. So I think that's where that comes from.
Part of the work moving
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder, the kids take the bio MCAS sophomore year or freshman
Yes.
year?
Sophomore.
Sophomore year.
Yeah.
So is that also part of the reason why you have bio in the 10th grade?
I know it's been that way since MCAS started, and we've always had bio in the 10th grade, and I think part of it. I wouldn't say that's the only reason. And again, when I came here, environmental science had been, it was here forever. And not good or bad, I'm just saying, I think it was one of those things we were kind of like stuck there as a freshman course. And then when that teacher retired, that's when we kind of like, oh, this is a good time to let's take a look at this. And then we really just looked at that freshman year, and then we liked I say we, science department, like the idea of having a science course that helps prep them for everything else, which is why we went with more of that physical science. So I think it's maybe convenient that the MCAS is that sophomore year, but I don't think we're saying it has to be done that year. Do you understand what I mean?
I do. I think though that in watching two of my kids do physics in freshman year, it does feel like physics to me. And so there's a lot of commentary on like the advanced math that the kids sometimes need to already have in that freshman science class. For a kid who's not mathematically inclined especially, which maybe there aren't many of them, but I happen to know one. So, I know that the strain, the calculus that gets inserted into the physics labs in the freshman year, I just wonder if it's worth a look, if you guys are considering resequencing or if
Dr. Blaine, you want to speak to?
I just want to say that it absolutely is worth a look at, as we consider our programming moving forward, looking at our vision for learning, not only but with our building visioning process, and I think it's just naturally part of the curriculum cycle that we're in to be taking a look at that course sequencing kind of globally and making sure that it makes sense for the current students that we have and looking future forward.
There are a lot of things that go into it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I know like at our school they opened up bio to senior, like they started pushing more, because kids may not always know in sophomore year, like, at least for my daughter that was true, like I can be a science kid. So it's like, we've had a lot more kids taking it actually as seniors now. Is that something that's kind of communicated to kids that you don't necessarily have to follow that particular roadmap, that you have to take it sophomore?
Are you saying, you're talking about AP bio?
I am.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something, I will tell you, that's gone back and forth and something we will look at. So this isn't the first time that's come up. So, yeah.
Well, it's a great opportunity for you guys to give it a great look, and we have some great people to do it, so thanks. Mike?
Just a couple of questions, and I think they're both sort of kind of centered around like reference tools. Of course, with a curriculum review, you have a chance to align your standards both with the middle school and with national standards. And I wonder, my first question is there space to include next generation science standards in the content standards of the science curriculum at Ashoba?
Yes, somewhat. Yeah, I think, so it's included, but I will tell you, we look more at the state standards. Now, I'm also, full disclosure here, I'm mostly biology, so that's my, you know what I mean, we have the biology MCAS, where our other courses, chemistry, physics, we have a little bit, it's a little looser. So there are standards that are embedded. Could we look at it more? Absolutely, no question about it. And again, that's why doing this work allows us that actual time to do that as well.
Yeah.
Because the problem is the collaboration, right? The time to collaborate, so.
Yeah, so the NGSS does kind of connect with state standards as well.
Absolutely.
And then the other question is sort of similar. A few years ago, the NRC put out these science and engineering practices, these 8 really critical practices, using models, computational thinking, asking questions, that kind of thing. And realizing that you have a number of bullets in your vision, I wonder if there's a place to infuse some of those as well into this revisited curriculum.
We could look at it. I mean, it's definitely being practiced K to 12. It's in like all of the curriculum maps, those science practices that have been developed so far. But yeah, I think it goes hand in hand too with the hands-on and the discourse. So we can look at making it even more clear in the vision.
Or go back to communication, right? Get it in there and show that it's being done.
All right, everybody, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
For a lot of work, good work. All right, everybody, moving on. I think Kate gets to stay.
2 more times.
Okay, so we're going to be looking next at the Neshoba Regional High School Student Handbook for 24-25. This sort of a thing does not need our vote. It's just are you doing our vote?
I thought the high school handbook did require,
Do we want our vote?
or is it school council vote?
Do you want our vote on that?
We typically vote the handbook
I think
in
school committee votes on
high
the
school handbook, yeah. Madam Chair, do you want to do the presentation schedule first since we have the guest? We'll do the handbooks and then tell them so we can dismiss those teachers as well.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Boynton, we're going to do a little detour, and especially if there's no objection from the committee to do the presentation on the future high school academic schedule first, because we have some other very special guests in the gallery who are going to join Dr. Boynton at the desk. Yeah?
Yes. Team.
Right. And then we'll transition to the handbook after that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I'll keep over. Just tell me next when you're ready from Dr. So if you'd like to introduce your team.
Will do. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much allowing us the honor and privilege to be with you this evening to share our progress on the work of working towards a new high school academic schedule. I'm joined by Janine Boulay, assistant principal. I'm joined by Kate Norton, business teacher, Robin Hermans, world language French teacher, and Mike Tollefson, science teacher. And so we're thrilled they're members of our work group, and graciously agreed to a meeting. That in living the schedule, that day one wasn't the same day one, almost next year. And that was like a realization for me that, wow, there's something going on here, and day one should be day ones. So that was like my own realization in living the schedule. The second area where the schedule came up was during the school building visioning process, as well as our strategic planning process at the district. And the schedule came up district-wide as well for elementary and middle, but at high school, and areas were to support students beyond the classroom, emphasizing social emotional learning, allowing us to implement a more robust MTSS process, and then the notion of flex block and or win block, many schools call it win, what I need now, that would allow us to potentially implement some MTSS or interventions as needed, and that common planning time and collaboration. It's been referenced in our panorama survey, the student survey, the pace of the day and workload. Those have come up as themes from our students over the last 2 years. So those are, they're reinforcing what came through in my entry plan. So those over the last 2 years. In proactively anticipating that the schedule will come up on the equity audit, I'm imagining that it will, and it has, and I've seen stage 1 and stage 2, it's alluded to in the equity audit. So anticipating that, it was prudent for us to take a look and examine the schedule. And then in our NEASC self-study, so we're a 2027 cohort school, and so our self-study will begin in the fall. And NEASC, the schedule will come up in our NEASC process without a doubt. In particular, time for collaboration for teachers and that intervention time for students. Those are foundational things for NEASC. And then finally, as we engage in this curriculum renewal cycle and renew and revise our curriculum as well as our instructional strategies, we should be examining whether our schedule still meets the needs of our students as we look to opportunities for deeper learning, authentic learning experiences. We need to look at our new schedule. So that's the why behind considering a new schedule. Turn it over to Janine.
Sure. We took a kind of senatorial approach to representation on our working group. So we had 2 members of each department join the working group: fine and performing arts, business and applied arts, English, social studies, math, special ed, guidance, wellness, world languages, science, and administration. And we met monthly at minimum. I'd say that this structure did 2 things. One, it kind of elevated the discussion school-wide around how a schedule really impacts teaching and learning, so that the different disciplines could really hear from one another on how the schedule impacts their day and their teaching and what the students are telling them about what they're getting out of the day. And then also impacts the resident members went back to their departments and either, through formal discussions during department meetings, talked about the work that was being done and came back to the working group and reported out, or informally, because often our departments have lunch together. And so there was a lot of continuous discussion about the different schedules that we were looking at, et cetera, as we worked through the process.
Turn it over to Kate and to Rob.
So in June, we got together as a group, just kind of talking about what we should be doing, setting norms, discussing the pros and cons of our current schedule, and then also our priorities and our values around the schedule, going through just kind of the steps and actions. And then later on, we created a Google Classroom where we were able to, over the summer, just kind of post articles and thoughts, just sort of stay connected. We had one new meeting during, I believe, August, where we just kind of got together and discussed what we'd learned over the summer. And then once we got into the groove of things during the school year, we were meeting about twice a week. So September and October, we created surveys and administered them. We had some site visits. I know Janine will talk more about that with the topics that we created, the questions that we're asking not only the students but also the faculty at those schools. And then in November and December, we kind of revised our priority areas at looking at the possibility for a new schedule. During the first several months of this process, we definitely talked a lot about our why, and I think it really comes down to creating a new schedule that will be the best for our students, as our motto at Neshoba, being your best self, with giving the students the schedule for them to be their best selves and prioritize their learning. And then in January, we just kind of continued meeting roughly once a week, just kind of figuring out what model would work best, the pros and cons for each, and then beginning to draft up the sample models that we'll talk about later on.
So I'll jump in here. This is our summary. So in February, we shared an update with the staff. We came to work to come to a consensus on an alternative schedule. And alongside our current schedule, we did brainstorm considerations. We anticipated some questions and feedback, and continued, though, to get feedback from our colleagues in our department. And then March, just last month, we finalized our alternative schedule in preparation. It was we got it. Yay! We voted, hands up, we've got it. And we prepared for the staff meeting, and we're continuing to get feedback from within the departments. And May, here we are. We're going to be presented to the faculty and staff and school committee. Here we are. So for the future, I think we're going to discuss these last green parts here, or should I go ahead and talk them?
Yeah, in green are steps to be still to be taken.
Yes. We will be putting together a planning group. Flex is this famous Flex block. We have many ideas. We're going to put together a group to map out the 6 Flex blocks that will still take place during our pilot. We are running in October a 3-week pilot to propose this new schedule. We're going to have to go through 2 full-day rotations, okay, with our 6 Flex blocks. You'll see in a moment how this is laid out. And then we're going to do a survey and a poll to our students and staff, see how that's rolling. They're going to love it. And then October, we're going to convene again our scheduling committee and vote. And as you see, the last step is to implement the schedule, not this year, but the following year, the 25-26 25, 26.
And if I may jump in, the schedule committee is different than the working group. The working group of 22 is non-voting, if you will, and the committee is a group that is assembled on the Unit A side by Kevin Keaveney, the NREA president, and it's outlined in the contract that there's equal members of administration and the Unit A, and that's the voting group. So this is all pre-work in preparation to bring the schedule to the committee, which is the voting group.
Just there are a number of schedules that we looked at in terms of research, along with the articles that we read over the summer on the impact of schedule. I'll note, we did a site visit to Lunenburg, to Wachusett, and to Sutton, and those were really informative. Lunenburg and Wachusett both had a rotating schedule that did a drop period, and both of them also had a flex block. Sometimes they called it an activity block that they held on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we were paying attention to that. We really were struck by Sutton's structure for their flex block. We met at all these schools. We spoke with administration and teachers and students about how they felt about the schedule. Sutton's structure of this flex block was really well organized, and it was really meant to impact teaching and learning in that it had specific collaboration for teachers for common planning and data teams. And it had specific MTSS interventions. So students were organized to go for extra help for different subjects depending on where their grades were in that subject. And so it was a really well thought out flex block. And so we kind of took that back, and we're pretty inspired by that one.
Turn it over to Mike.
All right, so we consider a whole bunch of different stuff. Just to just make sure everyone's aware of our current schedule is each student can take up to 7 classes, 7 periods per day, rotates, nothing's dropped. So student is in their class every single day, unless it's rotation. Right. Yeah, it's an 8-day rotation. That's more or less keep tracks of even and odds that way. So we looked at a whole bunch of different things. Status quos being one of them. Looking at 6-period type days, and actually a number of the schedules that Janine just mentioned cover those. We've always been fixated that we're going to keep students taking 7 classes, and then how do we work in the priorities that were the 3 big priorities that were agreed to by essentially the faculty and the scheduling working group. So the big 3, they were on the slides, but I want to emphasize them, was more time to teach, having that collaboration time, which we essentially don't have today. And then finally, that multi-tier support system for students, so they can get help during the day instead of, can they find a ride after school to stay for extra help type deals. And so these we weighed the pros and cons of all these different type of things to try to come up with those. So we ended up with so Sutton's an everyday flex block. We thought that was too much. That was too much addition. But what even flex block? Also charge more with where making possible to work on things that we just heard about. We have currently 4 lunches. We believe, especially with the new building, that we can whittle that down to 3. Our current schedule is 46 minutes for every class, except for our long block, which we have a long block because we have 4 lunches, and that's like 72 minutes. And so when we went to design the schedule, we tried to marry everything that was on our priority list. And one of the things that the faculty, and we collaborate very tightly with the faculty. We'd all go back to our departments, ask their opinions, feedback to the group. One very strong desire that people wanted to avoid, and I know some people are familiar with this type of schedule, was a drop 2. And so because teachers want to see their kids more often than not. And so we didn't want to skip 2 classes and not see those kids. So what we ended up with is a variation of a 7-drop-1 schedule that introduces a flex block on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So instead of having it every day, because one of the big things and one of our future things that we really need to work on to make the pilot work is to figure out flex block.
We want it we want to know where every kid is going to be. We want every student to have a use for that flex block. It's not intended to be a overall study block. It's intended to help our students. And so that's going to require a bit of planning. We recognize that, and that's going to be one of our big things that we're going to look at when we do the pilot in October. So what's on the screen is, because it's 7 periods, and this is actually common for most high schools, it's typically a 7-day rotation. And so there's a complexity to this rotation. And I think if we go to the next slide, it might be easier to read. So this is actually the beginning of the pilot, but the numbers are bigger. So what you see is on this screen, it's the gold days. Those are the Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Those are the days without the flex block. This is where we achieve our goal of having more class time per class. So it's 58 minutes versus the 46 that we have now. And then what we did is to get the flex block only 2 days a week, but still meet the faculty's desire to not have a drop two. We have 6 classes it's 6 classes every day. The difference on Tuesday and Thursday, which are the green days, is the addition of a flex block. So by going to a 3-period or 3 lunches, that we go from 46 to 48 minutes. So it's essentially a very similar schedule to what we have today on those Tuesdays and Thursdays. So like I said, we were trying to marry a bunch of goals, and this is where we ended up coming to consensus on. I think that nails it.
And then it just runs through the full
the
3
rest of
calendar weeks, but 2 full.
And I guess one thing I'll note about why is it 3 weeks, because it allows us that the holiday works right, and so it allows us to do a full 2 cycles, so 14 actual days of testing it out. Because the faculty really felt strongly about, before we adopt something, let's actually test it out and see how it works.
Thank you, Mike. And I would echo that the Friday of the last day of the pilot is also an early release, so we would see what this schedule looks like during an early release day. I'm going to finish up by sharing that those of us who live high school schedules know that no schedule is perfect. There are costs and benefits to each schedule, and as you heard Mike say, there were priorities that were identified, and we attempted to craft a schedule that allowed us to meet those priority areas. So there will be benefits and trade-offs sort of with any schedule adoption. We know that any new schedule must meet the requirements of 25% unassigned time within our contract, and in consulting with Mike, this schedule absolutely does that. It meets time on learning as well. Trade-offs with any new schedule should not be a reason to keep our current schedule. If a new schedule can achieve our main goals, longer blocks for learning, flex, collaboration, and common planning time. Internships is there, that elevated as a priority. A waterfall can be challenging with internships, but there are programmatic solutions to that that allow for internships, in particular with our pathways. So we have about 3 years to develop that to support internships, which is a priority for us as well. A bell schedule cannot fix everything. We know this. And some changes will need to be programmatic in nature, and those are conversations that we're engaging in right now. And one example of this is taking a look, what do our labs look like in this new schedule? And what do electives, what does PE, what does health look like in this new schedule? And those are programmatic conversations that we're having right now, which is also, last bullet point, that we'll have time to plan and prepare for any changes and any programmatic shifts during the 24-25 school year. That I will thank you for allowing us to present today and open up for any questions.
Thanks, Kate. Thank you, team. Appreciate all of your hard work. So, Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually had a question about the flex block. So with that schedule, then kids would only be able to see 2 teachers out of the 7, is that right, per week for like extra help? I guess that would be my concern if it was only 2 days, since they have 7 classes. You know what I mean? And that, like, or like, would they be able to go to 2 teachers? Like, because there's such
Yeah,
limited
so
time,
I think
right?
in the creation of a flex block, I'm going to give Sutton as an example. So students whose grades fell below a 75 in a class they were actually assigned to go see a teacher. But I also imagine, I have some colleagues that are in schools where students can self-select, and there are apps and platforms that allow for that, where if a student is not, they're doing okay, they've got a B, but they've got a major test coming up or a project they're working on, they can sign up to go see a teacher or 2. So in that case, if a student's grades are dropping, they would be assigned to a place as an intervention, but they would have the ability to also, in another capacity, to go see a teacher if they needed to see a teacher. Right? They would have that choice. So it's flexible means, if you will. We're using some UDL language, so flexible means. And that is on us to bring those design elements to the 6 trial FlexBox during our pilot to allow for that experience for students.
I guess I just want to make sure I understand. So for students that aren't assigned to extra help, and I know you're still working on this, but or don't have a big test coming up, it wouldn't be just default to a study hall. There would be something else that those kids would be assigned to do, or maybe there's some options they have to pick something to go do.
Yes.
They can't just go.
Yes.
And one of our next steps is to bring together a flex block design team and start to flesh out all the options and the logistics of that.
And one other question. Would teachers still offer after school extra
Yes,
help?
absolutely.
It would be at their discretion or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, not in place of, in addition to.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just address really quickly, Kate, the issue of the directed study and the study halls? And can you help us understand how, because that was identified by DESE as a problem in our schedule. So are those being eliminated?
Study halls, unfortunately, can't be eliminated completely. They can be and will be reduced because of the drop one. So there'll be fewer with fewer periods. It naturally kind of constricts the study halls. This schedule does not eliminate them completely. Right now, the way that we are organizing and structuring study hall, it's directed, it's not independent, and therefore it does count as time on learning, as do flex blocks. DESE is quite supportive of your flex and win block structures because of the MTSS opportunity, and in a professional learning community structure as well, flex and win offer opportunities for extensions of learning too. So it's a slightly different organization than your directed studies. Again, we would love to eliminate directed studies altogether. This schedule does not do that completely, but it does reduce them.
So the only problem with directed study is that it's not an opportunity for all kids to reach all educators, because they're, study halls are at different points in time during the day. They're probably things that we experienced when we were in high school, study hall. So we have made great strides in making them directed studies. And I was under the impression that this was going to try to eliminate them because they were identified as a problem. Because I know that they're directed studies, but they still present limitation as to how kids can access teachers, because teachers should not be bothered during their preps by kids knocking on their door and saying, "Can you help me? This is the only chance I have." We have the 2 flex blocks to try and work in, which is a great advancement. So that's my only question mark, and it's not necessarily a concern. It's just
I think it's something
mark.
we're going to be looking at too, for sure. In looking at all of the different schedule iterations, there weren't really any that eliminated study halls, and then allowed us as well to have the flex period. So I think, we've designed something that we looked at our needs and our as well as our values and what we wanted. And I feel pretty confident that this schedule does that. And yet we will still be looking at what study halls, the experience, that student experience as well. I don't know, team, do you want to?
Well, I mean, there are other reasons why study hall exists, and part of that is the number of required credits that a student has to take. So a schedule doesn't necessarily fix what the requirement for what students take.
The student is taking a 25.
It's 25, right? Yeah.
They have a study hall every other day.
But we're talking about, 28 technically if you want them in every class, every period.
Yeah, I guess I'm just considering that if you just take it off the table, then that does cure the problem. Where I know that in Hudson we don't have study halls, kids take 7 classes. And so it just builds in more electives, frankly. It gives kids opportunity to explore interests and takes off the table this specter of DESE drilling in one day and saying, this is a concern for us and kind of blowing it all up again. So again, it's not a concern saying, no, you guys fixed the problem and you made it a directed study and you have it much more structured, but it's still just a question mark in my mind.
Right, so I think, as we continue our work in curriculum and programming, certainly a conversation, especially as we grow to different learning modalities, we should be having the conversation about credits and the number of classes that students are signed up for as well. I think that is an absolutely healthy and fair exploration to continue to engage in. And if students are more fully enrolled at the 28 credit, then there are no study halls, and then there's flexes built in. However, I'd want to caution us right now with our current learning modalities in place. With that, I think that might be too much for students. We see students who are fully enrolled and there's a high level of stress. So we're working to shift those learning modalities to create some balance. And then I think it's something that our school community needs to continue to look at.
I'm just curious, did the working group think about the timing of piloting in October, knowing that you have a freshman class that will have 1 month under their belt?
We did, actually. It was very intentional. The spring is too crazy to implement any kind of pilot. And the intentionality around the launch of the pilot was to allow our freshmen to have almost a full quarter under their belts, if you will, half a quarter under their belts, to get used to the high school, to acclimate, so that they will have experienced the bell schedule, and then have the opportunity to experience the new proposed bell schedule, to be able to provide some informed feedback. So it was intentional, so to not roll it out at the launch of school, but to have something to compare it to.
All right. So, what an ambitious task. Dana, one more question.
I'm just shocked to hear about the study hall being removed. That's from DESE? Because that was huge when I was in high school, and I built it in because that was providing me the ability to handle my workload and work after school, which was a big factor. So I'm curious what the students think of that.
DESE approves of and counts directed study, which is what we have implemented. We essentially had it, but we needed to provide a little bit more structure, and DESE counts directed study as time on learning currently.
So being in a classroom with a teacher versus being in the cafeteria working independently?
Correct.
Ms. Ellis, if I may, Madam Chair. Ms. Ellis, it's part of the DESE requirements of 990 instructional minutes over the course of 180 days. So directed study counts towards that. Open study hall does not.
All right, everybody. So we're going to thank the team one more time. Awesome job, guys. Thank you for pushing through and doing all that work. It's huge. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And a truly invaluable experience in my mind. Just
That's great. Good luck.
Thanks to my team.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the next item here. I know that if you're you're wondering how are we doing with the clock, we're not doing great. So we're going to try to. Sorry. No, it's not your fault. It's holding hours. So we're going to try to do these next few things kind of succinctly, if you guys don't mind. So let's move next to the high school just handbook. What do you have for us, Dr. Boynton?
Okay, so last year, if you recall, we had one of the most complete overhauls of the handbook ever that I've experienced through the coordinated review process from DESE. So this year, we focused on 2 sections for review. And the first section is attendance, and that one was something that my school council has been working on for 2 years now. So just taking a look at attendance, perhaps some more kid-friendly language. We'll see. We crafted a sort of an attendance vision statement, and then the group decided that really should be more in communication and not go in a handbook. So I have a lovely "This We Believe" about attendance vision statement from the school council that'll be separate in messaging. So the attendance was one section that we focused on, and it's been a goal of the high school as well to improve our overall student attendance. And there's some language in there that hopefully will elevate that work. And then the eligibility section as well. So in talking with Tanya, our athletic director, the eligibility section was a little bit confusing. It was a little bit redundant, and we were not quite in line with the MIAA. We had criteria for eligibility that went above and beyond the MIAA, and we have scaled that back, rightly so, and brought us in line with the MIAA. So in attendance, we put in reference to the mass regulations for attendance. We made some slight adjustments to makeup work. We changed, so DESE allows for a certain number of absences. And then when schools sort of get into going into loss of credit for classes, we shifted that from 14 to 18, which brings us to 18 is considered chronically absent. And so when we're looking at making a significant step in removing credit from a student for being absent, we want to make sure that that there's, I guess, weight to that. And so 18 seemed to be, because that's the point where a student's chronically absent from school, that we would begin to explore possibly losing credit with obviously the opportunity to buy that back, never taking that step lightly in any way, shape, or form. Right now, how our attendance policy is written, students are allowed up to 21 absences because they have the 14 plus an additional 7 that parents can excuse. And that is well above the 18 absences that lead to a student being considered chronically absent. So we needed to tighten some things up. So we have our DESE language that allows for a certain number, and then when we delve into possibly losing credits, we allowed for 18, and with the possibility for buybacks. Removing unexcused tardies and adding that up to an absence. So that was something that's hard to manage and track with our current system. That bullet or item number 5 is one that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. We chose to remove the language allowing parents to excuse up to 7 absences. And the reason is that when the state looks at our absence codes, a parent excused counts as an absence. Parents are not allowed to excuse absences. We need documentation to exempt an absence. So we want parents to call in and report their child absent if they have the stomach bug or if they have a headache or a fever. And then if the parent or guardian makes the decision to bring the child to the doctor's note exempts the absence. We have that as a code. So we're looking and working with Kathy Leonardi as well to update our codes. The current language just is very confusing because it's not accurate with what can actually happen with reporting attendance and what counts and what doesn't as an absence. There was a whole section on physical education attendance, whole subsection. We removed that, not needed. Coach Tucker is on my school council. He's like, Dr. B, I don't know why that was ever really in there, so we're going to remove it so it's not as confusing. We changed the language in the appeal process subsection to reflect the loss of absences limit. And we are, I'm working with my administrative team to develop a robust process around that, because we don't take lightly if we take a step to reduce credits for a student temporarily to help them get back on track. We actually want to take interventions earlier than that so they don't reach that point. Let's see, changes in the language for class also a class that is and then improves the attendance curricular subsection. That is not needed, and most of that is covered in the eligibility section. And then the tardy to school subsection, we removed most of it. It was just language that didn't really need to be there. And then a tardy to school consequences protocol, very similar to the other one. It is progressive in nature. It is supportive. We want to take steps to create supports and interventions to encourage students to attend school. And then the truancy subsection, we also cleaned up language there, hopefully to make it cleaner. To tell you a little bit about the process, my school council was involved heavily, as well as my entire administrative team, including the 2 main office secretaries who are, that this is their world, with Slade in particular, but also Marcia Winter. They live it day in, day out, and so they made some recommendations because this is the world that they live in, and they want to support their students and allow for procedures that are a little more clear-cut, clear in language, and streamlined. So, and we intend to continue to go back. There's more work to be done, but we had to make a decision to cut the work off at this juncture, but we're going to continue to go back and refine as needed. And then in the eligibility, the basic change in the language is to match the MIAA wording, and then there was a lot of repetitive language, so that was removed as well. And the big thing for the MIAA is that we were holding students to passing not only 4th quarter, but also the year. And the MIAA, you need to pass the year, is what you need to pass. So it made sense for us to be in line with MIAA. And with that, I'm all done.
All right. Any questions? Go ahead, Joe.
Dr. Boynton, could you go back to number 5 and just explain that one to me? I'm listening to you, but I'm also reading number 5 over and over again, and I'm interpreting it 15 different ways. I mean, one reading of this could be that it says here that you're removing the language allowing parents to excuse up to 7 absences. And I could read it one way that says that the child has been marked absent, but then the parent who there's a 7-day, you have 7 days leeway here. A parent could come in and say, well, I'm going to excuse that absence because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
That's why I'm reading, but I know you can read it.
I'm going to go right to the language that's in the handbook itself, actually. And what our handbook currently says is that parent notes will excuse up to 7 absences. All other absences must be excused by formal documentation. All absences that are to be considered excused, meaning not counting towards the count of absences, have to have formal documentation. A parent note does not count, and this is per Massachusetts regulations. And so that has to be removed. So a parent can call their student, call the attendance line and say, Kate's not coming in today, she's not feeling well, and that is a reported absence. The student's not truant. The parent has indicated to us that they're not coming in, but Teresa can't go in there and say, oh, that's parent excused, because it's not. There's no parent excused in DESE world and in Massachusetts.
I guess I can add a little color to this. I'm drawing off my memory of the statute on school attendance, which is, state statute is quite dated as well. They use the language excused absences, but it's 7 days within a 6-month period is how it's phrased in the law. And it's simply or unexcused. It's simply those absences that are not documented for a medical or religious reason, right? So even the notion, the idea of a parent excuses an absence, it's not saying parents can't excuse absences. It's saying it's just not relevant because the law is written to just days missed from school, void of medical documentation or religious documentation.
I'll go back. I know you don't know the site for the regulations, right?
No.
You don't, okay, I'll look at it. But I guess, so how does one document a religious exemption or excuse? How do you do that?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's as simple as this. I'm out on Good Friday because we're honoring that holiday in our family. That's as far as the law goes. And that statute, you should look it up, Attorney Gleason. There is a fine to deter people from having extensive absences. In violation, you could lose up to $20 if you were in violation of this law. So that it does tell you how antiquated the language is in the law, but for religious exemption, you just have to say, you just have to claim you're observing it for religious exemption.
Did the bereavement excused absence fall under the religious?
Yeah, I would have to look at all the
Okay,
detail. I can't remember all the detail.
Thank you.
There is a bulleted list of absences that are considered excused, and religious is one. A health appointment, if there's a death in the family, and obviously those would be, the parent or guardian would report those for those specific reasons. What we have found at the high school is that so-and-so is going, they're not here. There are other reasons, not the list of, I guess, legitimate excused absences that other family, we're going on vacation and these are the 5 days that we're using and I'm using my parent excused. That's an extreme example, but families are definitely using parent excused for different reasons other than that list of legitimate reasons. And it sets up, I think, a false understanding of how many days a student can actually really be absent from school, going over the number of days that are allowed.
Just has one follow-up. All right, so just for my own edification, let's say a parent fails to appropriately document why their child is absent, and the child is marked absent. And I'm not advocating for this at all, I'm just curious. Once the child is marked absent, does the parent have any recourse to alter that absent mark?
Absolutely.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Very little.
Yeah, if there is, they can reach out to their assistant principal, to the dean, to the main office secretaries, turn in a note the next day or even 2 days later or whatever, or just a phone call to say, here's the situation. So yes, absolutely, there's always recourse.
I have a question for you, Kate. So it says that if a student is absent for vacations, I'm sorry, I'm on page 22.
Okay.
Label 22 on your document. It says at the very top, what I'm basically wanting to know is, how do kids make up work? So let's assume that they're just home, they're sick, they don't have a doctor's note, they have a sore throat, they're just home. What is the rule around them being allowed to make up work? It says here something about them taking vacation or trips.
I think makeup work is in another section.
Okay.
And I haven't committed that section to memory.
I know, I actually did, students who cut classes will not be allowed to make up work, so that's cut classes.
Here it is. It's on page 27. There's a subsection on makeup work.
Thank you.
1 day from their day of return to contact teachers regarding any missed work and set up a plan. Most teachers are super flexible, but just contact the teacher to make up work.
And so the deal is generally that if a kid is out sick, let's say that something was due that day, then following day when they come in, they should have it ready?
I think that depends on why they were sick. If they were really, really sick, like with COVID or something, probably not, right? So it's just really connect with the teacher when they return. Within one day of return, connect with the teacher about any missed work or assignments not able to be turned in.
Okay. I mean, my experience is...
We didn't change the makeup work.
I know. I think that my experience as a parent has been flexibility generally, but I think that this is actually a sticking point that, like, I'm not talking about extended absences. Once in a great while, you will run into some rigidity where, oh, you weren't here, and the day you come back, you don't have it, and I have, you should have it. So I think that I don't know if, I'm trying to read it quick. My experience is that this language was not sufficient to manage that scenario, which I bet is pretty common.
In terms of the makeup work, that's definitely a section that I could take up with my school council next year.
Okay.
And see, and I think it would be interesting to hear from my students, Ava being one, Winston another, or bring school council members to hear what their experience is and if that's a section that they'd like for us to tackle.
Yeah. So like the stuff they miss when they're absent, that's when you need an extra day. But it's the stuff that they didn't pass in the day they were out. Is it due the next day? It might seem small, but
no, I think there's some inconsistency
in our world. It's
It's
a big deal. Sure.
I think this is a great topic. I know that we have some work to do this summer in looking at our engagement with students at the high school level. And in our first visit to the Stuco this fall, why don't we work on this as a question? So
I think that's great.
I think that'd be a great part to get some student feedback on.
Okay, great. Any other questions about the handbook?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott.
I actually have two.
Okay.
The second one will depend on the answer to the first one.
Okay.
What is Massachusetts policy on it? What's their constraints on attendance? What does Massachusetts say on that? Because you're saying 18. I'm assuming Massachusetts has at some point they start.
This is where the regulations, Mr. Powell, aren't in line with the state statute. The state statute is written to no more than 7 absences over a 6-month period. And then the state, by the Board of Education, defines chronic absences as 18 or more absences over the course of the year. They're not aligned at all.
And if you are absent more than 18 times, you have to take the class over again? I mean, what's the penalty?
No. So that's
and so there's complexities around that. So what past practice has been is if it continues to be a problem and working with the family, there's no resolution, that you can take it to the court and have plans put into place. Those would get to very draconian measures at that point. So you try to work with families along those ways to figure out those processes. And an example of how we've done that is in our bridge program at the high school for school avoidance and working with students there. So,
yeah, because the reason I ask is it's not clear what the objective is, right? Is the objective for students to learn? In which case, how much of a factor is absence in that learning? I mean, this has been a source of tension in my household since I've had children in school, because my wife and I don't agree on this topic. And so, but the bottom line being, if the student is learning all they need to learn, even if they miss 50 days, whatever it is in all their classes, why is it relevant how much they're in school?
Well, because by state statute, they have to be in school. That's
There you go.
a social mechanism.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, the parts in the proposed changes to the handbook, there's a few sections that aren't expanded upon. Is that things that are going to be developed later, or?
Can you give me
Yeah, so I was specifically about the bridge program on page 17 in the PDF.
Is there a handbook page?
Yep, page 17.
That is for, that will be for next year's handbook. Yep. That was one that we weren't able to connect. So the blue will be, when I create, when Marcia and I create the final, this will remain as a copy with the blue as a note for us to continue, and then that will be flushed out for next year, it had antiquated language of supports that did not exist, that we need to add in language around the Student Success Center in Bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Guys, if there are no other questions, I'd like to move the agenda. So if you do, however, have any questions that you want addressed before the next meeting when we vote on this, just email me. All right, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Again.
Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for all the
Feel free to pick a cookie on your way in.
Take some cookies. All right, guys. We're going to move on to the appointment of a new member on the school building committee. And I think it might be appropriate to ask Joe to take the lead on this. Or?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Several weeks ago, we lost a member from Stowe. Mr. Chris Bucky was a member of the Finance Committee. He was very instrumental in bringing in the Stowe vote back in September. But I want to thank the committee for detaching or unlocking our committee from the previous assignments and designations that we had for our original committee members. So now we are free to just choose the best possible candidate regardless of the background. So in this regard, we have an individual step forward. Her name is Joanna Grossman-Miller. She is a designer and developer and deliverer of training for the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Harvard University. Obviously a member of Stowe. She has children, younger children in the district who will obviously be able to take advantage of the high school when it's finished. So without further ado, I would move to appoint Joanna G. Miller as a member of the Neshoba Region High School Building Committee.
I'll second that. And I would just say that I endorse Joanna Miller as a candidate. She's my neighbor, and I speak very, very highly of her. She's very involved in the town, and I'm excited that she's willing to join. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to the next item, and that's the communication policy. This is a first reading, and so Kirk has it projected there for you. It's also in the meeting materials. This has been a labor of love all year long, and I want to thank Kirk and Amy Vessels for bringing this to us. And Laura was a part of it as well.
No, the policy committee, the whole
The whole policy committee.
Everybody really dug in on contributing ideas.
I'm sorry, I thought you were pointing to Laura. I was going to give you some.
Oh, no.
No, so to the whole policy subcommittee for bringing this to us. This is something that we asked for in September, and you guys have been working on it consistently ever since. So what I'd like to do is, we're not taking a vote on this tonight, so if you guys have any questions or concerns, Amy's going to kind of jot down, and then this is going to come back to us the next time around, because I know that Kirk is going to try to build in some professional development for our educators so that we can see this implemented come September.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments or concerns?
I do have a question.
Go for it.
Which is odd because I've seen this.
Well, not all of it. It got modified, yeah.
Some of it.
There's an explanation.
I am curious about the specific, let me find it, I'm so sorry, reference to student photographs and the written consent. So how is that ensured and monitored? Or like what mechanisms do we currently have in place that would protect students?
So just to give you some context to that question, pardon me.
Go for it.
Is that the work that we did as a subcommittee, we took that work, our last meeting was last Monday, and I forwarded that off to council, to district council, and district council reviewed these policies and sent them back to us yesterday. So what was updated in the meeting materials and the elements in red and the highlights, you'll see JM and certain words, those are the recommendations of council to add based upon other communication policies that other school districts have enacted that tie together with important policies throughout. So like for instance, in posting pictures on web pages, we want to make sure that at the beginning of the year when families have their annual documents that they fill out, that if students have no photo releases, those are honored. And that's a way to tie those policies together.
Does that protect, so for example, when the comment comes out and there's all these amazing
Yes.
photos,
Yes.
would that also include like a teacher-run Instagram account, for example?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or?
I had a question about that. Actually, about the publishing student work, getting student permission. Is there already something in place in like the journalism classes where they're getting that assigned? Like the syllabus has that in it, and parents are signing off on that because they're publishing student work all the time, right? So how is that? You know what I'm trying to say? How are they getting parent permission for the broadcast journalism stuff and the print journalism stuff?
Can find out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at our beginning of the year disclosure and see if the details in there as well.
Okay.
And I wonder if like the journalism, the regional is like different from teacher websites, and like if it's just in a different category. I know that maybe yours wasn't, but
Yeah.
they've been publishing for years.
Yeah, I don't know. I always put it in my syllabus and then had parents sign off on it that way.
Yeah, Karen.
I just have a question about the confidential information piece. So, this is confidential information about a student being sent to the parents of that student, correct? We're saying that that is not.
I didn't hear quite clear.
The confidential information, so we're saying that caregiver communication, so parent caregiver can't receive confidential information about their child via email? Is that what that means?
That's typically.
Yes.
Well, I understand that, but I'm thinking about from a special ed lens and teams that are having meetings and sending reports, trying to get them to teams, to parents 2 days ahead of time. It's almost always via email unless the district has.
I'll take that question back to council.
Okay. And I'm also thinking about things like, and I don't know if this counts as confidential, but data, progress monitoring data for kids that parents may request. Typically that's going to be sent. They don't want to send it in a backpack. They're going to send it electronically. So I'd just be curious about that.
Hold on one moment. Say the second one.
Progress monitoring data on kids if parents request reports from STAR assessments, things like that, reading intervention data.
I think that falls under records request law, student records request law. It is not necessarily part of a communications policy.
So it would be okay to send those electronically, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, you can send those electronically. You can send IEPs electronically.
Reports,
So, and like I said, and reports and things, I'll get that from council as well.
Any other questions? All right, everybody, if those questions come to you, just send them to me and I can keep a running list and make sure that if they're lawyers specific, Kurt can address them. So thanks, policy, one more time. That's awesome.
Great questions too.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, we are going to engage in a very brief summative evaluation presentation. So might I drive? So this is something that if you have been on the committee for a while, you've seen a version of it before. And therefore, we are going to move relatively quickly. A lot of this is review. So I'm going to let Mike introduce it, because it's got an M on the slide.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
I don't know if those letters are updated from last year.
I think they are, but I don't know. if
That
you
just
were
means I'm
over
used
there.
to it. Yeah, I'm prepared. So let me be the first to welcome you all to the sequel of the formative evaluation training from February, almost exactly 3 months ago. You'll recall that the formative training provides some insight as to how during the mid-cycle the school committee can course correct, and at this point, or can help course correct and can help guide, and at this point it is about evaluating the self-evaluation and preparing the summative assessment. Again, the self-assessment is our destination, but also is sort of the beginning point of this cycle. The superintendent obviously has been working on his, his student learning goal, his professional practice goal, and the 4
Or
district goals. So they've been kind of playing out over the past several months. The formative assessment was bottom left in February, and again here we are in May for the summative evaluation. So at this point, the step 5, in other words, before the cycle kind of continues, the superintendent will provide the updated evidence that sort of is more exhaustive than we received back in February, and a self-assessment through the DESE rubric. As a school committee, our role is to simply evaluate the progress and provide some overall observations, and it will ultimately lead to a summative assessment.
So how do we develop the composite evaluation? And we do that by each member of the committee completes an individual evaluation. The evaluation form is exactly like the one that you had the opportunity to look at that Kirk sent out earlier. The form is exactly the same. It assesses the goals that were set at the beginning of the year. Let's see. So we'll be presented that tonight with his evidence filled into the form and the rubric. We're hoping that everyone on the committee will participate and send in that individual evaluation by next week on Wednesday. At which point, or send it to me please. I will take all of that information, I will collect it together and create a composite that is reflective of the thoughts of the entire committee. I will get that to you by the 20th of May so that everybody has an opportunity to look at it before our next meeting. And then we will present it at the next meeting, which is on May 22nd. So on the individual evaluation, it's that same form. We're going to assess progress towards the goals. The performance ratings on each of the standards and focus indicators, and then an overall performance rating, which will be submitted to DESE. Here is, again, the goals. Everybody has access to this slideshow, right? So,
it's not in the meeting materials, guys, which I apologize for, so I'll either post it
Both of us.
tomorrow.
So we've seen this many times, but if you would like to see it again, it is in the slideshow.
And you'll see.
And again, the standards with the focus indicators, which we had seen before, and on to the meeting.
So guys, we're going to email this to you. This is going to be the basic rubric. Last year we asked Kirk Lodge that he use this as his self-assessment tool. And so what he's going to present to us in a minute here is a mirror image of this. And as you scroll down, adapted. But ours is blank, right? Because it's just a template. But I have imported all of his goals in here for you. So he has his professional practice goal, his student learning goal, and his district improvement goals. And so what you then do is give him a rating on each one. Did not meet some progress, whatever. And then you go down to the standards. Tried to color code it to make it obvious. And I've included only the indicators that we just identified on the slide. And so as we go here, you will then need to highlight the overall rating. So you could say to yourself, he's exemplary in curriculum and proficient in assessment. So it can be varied across the various rows. But for every single piece of this, you have to give him an overall rating on that particular standard. And as you go down, there's standard 2, then there's standard 3, and standard 4. The best part is that we then provide, based upon all that we saw up above, we then are responsible for individually giving an overall summative rating. Commentary is very important because it helps the personnel subcommittee and Sharon in particular build the composite to make sure that as many voices are there as possible. As a committee in the past, we've agreed that it wouldn't necessarily just be an average of all the scores. Sharon is going to use her judgment to take into account everything that you highlight and everything that you comment she'll use her best judgment to create an evaluation composite that she thinks is representative of all. And on the 22nd, when we come back together,
You can say yay or nay, and we would have to then edit it in that meeting in front of Kirk, which is always fun for Kirk, I know.
It's a good time.
Yep. So that is going to be emailed to you. It is a read-only document. You'll have to make a copy of it. And then if you want to just download it to a PDF, you can send it off to Sharon, or you can just share it with her. Mike, this is you, John.
Yes, this is just review from the formative training. We can go over it, but it's
Oh,
really,
it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we don't need to. So these are the resources that you guys are going to need to do this work. Again, I will email this out to you, and we'll also put it into the materials so you'll have the stuff. You guys only have 7 days to take what Kirk is about to present to us and write your own individual evaluation.
And will what you send to us include the missing hyperlink?
On the evidence, oh yeah, yep. So it is available in your email, but I will hyperlink it for you. All right. And so that said, I'm going to hand the driving wheel over to Kirk, and we're going to move on to the superintendent's final evaluation presentation. You know, guys, that this is the last time that Kirk will have a 1-year cycle. We will be on this by Jesse's regulation. He will be on a 2-year cycle. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just going to go through the document with you all today. It's, the feedback on the format and how this was done, as you referenced, was positive, and so we'll work down through there. And I've done my best to try to streamline for you, particularly around the strategic plan. So as we go through here, this language is very much like the language from the formative, just adapted for the current state. There's 3 elements. Mike described those in his opening there. So we'll just move into the first part 1, and that's the district improvement goals and strategic objectives. So this is around improving communication systems and protocols to strengthen culturally responsive homeschool relationships that foster understanding and community engagement. And you can see that the activities that we worked on this year that were cited in the formative report address the strategic initiatives listed here from the strategic plan. And the links here will provide, there are 2 areas for links that I've tried to provide for you where it made sense, just did a direct link right there in the activity. So I took the planned activities column, changed it to evidence to link that, or just put it in there so it just walks over from the formative presentation. So as we walk down here, there's lots of things in terms of communication that we as a school system were able to achieve this year. The walkover to our new webpage, the building of the finance and operations transparency page, the listening sessions with faculty and staff around the PPS director search, onboarding of our communications specialist, and finding an opportunity with somebody in-house with Ms. Bridget Hannigan to do our communications work. And evidence of that is found in the press releases and social media links and feeds that are on our webpage. And then there's also the communications of 8th grade students for enrollment of Neshoba Regional High School. That link will take you to the activities that were done this year to show improvement in how we can educate our 8th graders going to 9th grade. And looking at the communication cycles for universal screening data, we had lots of discussions about this in school committee, and that is linked here as well. What I will tell you is a walkover is the family university. That is an area we didn't get much traction with. We did begin some initial conversations with our joint PTO meeting that Mr. Mulcairn and I had this year around the concepts that we're talking about. But energy wasn't put behind any of that yet. That and including also the notion of like a Neshoba Foundation. They're both very just sort of tricky. So we're gonna move forward with that. Now that doesn't mean we didn't have educational opportunities for our families. Dr. Epstein was a good example of that earlier this year. We just didn't get to the formalized steps of what that could look like in perpetuity. Okay. And so there are some comments around those planned activities that you'll see in the superintendent comments and analysis under the objective. And so some of those links are the same links from above. I just brought them down into the text there. One of the important things that we're doing, and I have an activity this week to talk to our psychologists and team chairs around, we're looking at special education communications and streamlining that. And so we decoupled those positions this year. We'll be gathering feedback this week about some of the impact of that decision. So I'm excited to learn more from our folks this week about that. And the other items I think I've already referred to from up above. And then you'll see the additional links there. One additional activity I'm going to note, and we were able to direct you one particular school committee meeting to the Great Road podcast. We're up to 6 episodes now, so I would encourage you all to click on that link and listen to the Great Road podcast because it gives insight into where some innovative work is being done in our school system. Moving into strategic objective 2, this is our teaching, learning, and leading standard. And this is a really dense area. So I didn't put any links here in the evidence or what was before the planned activities because as you would imagine when composing the superintendent's evaluation, I'm drawing from 1,000 different places. So this is really an aggregate of the teaching and learning department, the finance and operations, the human resources department, all make their contributions toward this because these are all the activities that are going on. So I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Friend and the teaching and learning team for bringing some robust work to the school system this year that's highlighted in this section. So as we look at our evidence to date, these are things that have been brought to you in school committee agendas this year. And as you know, we organize the school committee report strategically by which objectives we're addressing in those presentations. So we have the professional development that's been conducted, all the behavior path, organization, and leadership, our social groups that are being along with the curriculum facilitation process that you should know from those presentations. But I'll turn you to, in terms of the curriculum mapping, these are some examples of curriculum mapping. It's sort of a cross-section across the district that gives you a scope of a variety of activities. These are not perfect. These are where we are today in various areas. And I'll give you a sense, I'll jump down to U.S. history on industrialization as one example of how last year, if you remember, as we were building and developing these cycles, we know that through these cycles of curriculum development, we want to get aligned with how the maps are constructed. So you'll be able to see in these maps the course grades, unit of studies, curriculum frameworks, the standards, the practices, our enduring understandings and essential questions, as well as what are the transfer goals that are being identified in that area, skills and concepts. And when we scroll down, there's our portrait of a Neshoba graduate, we get into key vocabulary and assessments. You'll notice in blue, for instance, here's materials, and then we get into assessments. We're not publishing our assessments publicly. Publishing the assessments would remove the integrity of the assessment. So we put those there to say that's the work that these teams have worked on this year to build their common assessments. So in this one, the Rubber Barons Captains of Industry simulation activity is an assessment towards that work. And so that's an example of where assessment work has been conducted. So I encourage you to scroll through the curriculum guides, the curriculum maps here to see some examples of that as you look towards that work. And some familiar items too. You saw the 9 to 12 science curriculum update tonight. So that should be recent in your minds when thinking about this element, as well as the curriculum review presentation and the updates that are coming. And I know Ms. Friend will be updating the committee on that, I think, in the next meeting. So you're going to get that information prior to our wrap up there. An important part of what we were doing here as well is around our leadership and looking at how we analyze and look at teaching in the classroom for the purpose of supervision and evaluation. Can't understate this step that we've done this year. All the principals and half of our high school department heads have completed successfully the Analyzing Teaching for Student Results course. And the work that they're doing there is already being seen in our schools as they focus on enduring understandings and mastery objectives in their courses, and working with faculty and staff on the importance of having these elements within their courses. And it is part of our work to lift the learning across the district. The remaining folks, any new hired administrators, and the other half of our department heads are taking the course beginning in the fall. So we will then go on through our 2-year cycle in order to do that. As you would imagine, we can't have everybody doing the course all in the same year, because then you empty your entire district for 6 days of leaders that need to be in their schools leading the schools. So that's why we've taken a staggered approach to this. And I believe we also will have some assistant principals doing that course next year as well. I think by now you're familiar with the innovation pathways, if I'm clear, because we've presented on the innovation pathways, I think the last 4 meetings in a row, which has been a major step in initiative number 2 in advancing our teaching and learning. So moving on into our community connections objective, the equity audit, you've seen reports 1 and 2. And we've been able to conduct the professional development with our leadership team and also with our district-wide team of faculty and staff. We're going to continue that work with Dr. Warnham going into next year and expanding school-based models for our equity work and equity teams at the school level. So we're excited about that. You have evidence around the panorama surveys that are included also in the equity audit presentations, and a lot of information was extrapolated from those to gather that information. Also building upon advisory in our schools this year. I hope I'm not going too fast, guys. It's just trying to be attentive of the time and just pointing things out to you. So I'll just keep even more, huh? Okay, good. I'll step on the gas. I'll definitely step on the gas. So you'll see the examples of professional development that we did here around advancing our community connections. Okay, and some work just around, we did, well, I'll just move into the next objective. Objective 4 is really a lot about looking at how our approach of the deans, balancing out our leadership and our deans and our social emotional structures that happen around the school has been very positive. And creating the leadership, I wanted to point out to you, I had examples of, well, they're in the goals. Pardon me. This is another point where the Finance and Operations Center is critically important to creating transparency around how we're responsibly spending taxpayers' dollars to educate students. Then moving into the goals now. This is section 2 around the student learning goal. Our goal was around 70% of our students hitting expected growth benchmarks, and you had the beginning of the year and mid-year presentation to that, and we were pleased to see that we were hitting those benchmarks, so we've met this goal. We'll be doing our administration's end of the year again. The next time we'll come around to you will be again next year after we do our first round of screenings to show year to year over a 12-month period what does the growth look like for those students that took those universal screeners across both those benchmarks. Some important work that we referred to earlier in the year was around the mid-year updates that we do with our principals around the work that's happening in their schools. So working with the principals, I promised we'd have a conversation with them and say, okay, can we make sure that our work is available for our committee? So there you are. Here are the mid-year updates that were conducted at the end of February was our mid-year update. And they're very different. They're intentionally supposed to be different. We give our principals in these presentations, as they collectively presented to you school improvement plans, they have put their own flavor on the mid-year update based upon the work that's happening in the schools and some areas that they're focusing on based on those conversations. So you'll see some of that there. At the summer retreat, they'll be giving their state of the school presentations based on what they learned from the totality of this year and what they're thinking about in their plans to move forward for next year. And there's the detail around those examples, and you can read those things. The professional practice goal, is, again, to be a little bit redundant around building that communication strategy for the finance and operations office. I won't repeat myself there. So as we move through there, and what you'll do is you'll look at the evidence and then look at the language and the standards. We strive for exemplary. This is the same thing that when we put rubrics in front of students, that's what we strive for. We strive for that because that's showing that we're putting our thoughts to work behind actions, and we're trying to show a high level of excellence for the school system. I can say that when we look at the opening assessments of instruction, assessment, and data-informed decision-making, that I would assess all three of these as exemplary in the amount of work, time, effort, and attention that has gone on in the school district with all of our teacher leaders, and especially our educators in the classroom, around looking at this deeply. That doesn't mean we've reached a desired state that's where we want to be. We're a learning organization. And as a learning organization, we're constantly striving for continual improvement. So the effort towards that work, it's exemplary. And I can't overstate that. Now, we know, and as you see from what is presented in the links, we still have work to do. We got curriculum cycles to go through. And every 5 years, as we work through each sort of sector's curriculum cycle, each department is always going to be at a different place. But that's what a continual cycle of improvement looks like. It doesn't mean you've reached the utopian state of where things look. It means your work, your effort, your analysis, and your desire to always be better is present in the daily activities and work of the faculty and staff. So as we look then into the management and operation elements, we actually sort of had some discussions a little bit about this this evening. This is always an interesting one, right? Around developing and executing plans for safe procedures, routines, and operational systems. I would say the elements that pointed to this is some of the work that our middle school deans have been doing around restorative practices, how we're looking at updating our handbooks and working with our faculty and our administrators on training according to the law around safe procedures that we need to be conducting. And then gathering feedback from families, students, and staff around what's happening in our schools. And we did a lot of that work this year in terms of the engagement surveys, working with our high school students. So I think we've done a lot of work in informing our instruction. We saw examples of that tonight. Scheduling management and information systems. You'll see the work of the high school schedule. We'll soon get the elementary and middle school updates on how we're looking at that. And then the fiscal systems points to the obvious place I've mentioned already. We believe in a shared responsibility of our work, so we're empowering administrators to work to collaborate with families to address academic, social, and emotional needs. That is done a lot in our survey work. And I'll tell you, when we get requests at our office where parents and families have concerns, I can tell you we invite people in. Come sit down. We're not going to turn you back. We're gonna engage with you to learn and understand in an effort to move forward and always improve the system as well. And then as we work on shared culture, the major piece of work around shared culture here is the work that we did around our PLCs this year and building the norms, the agreements, the practices of how we work together as educators to look at student learning, to understand it and be curious about the questions of when we see students not able to meet those learning goals or exceed those learning goals, what are the steps, actions, and intentions we have to address that? That's the core PLC and the PLC links that are referenced in the evidence.
Thank
So
you,
with that.
Fantastic, thank you for that presentation. It was quite fast. We do appreciate that. Before I take any questions, I'm just needing you guys to buckle in for about 15 more minutes, maybe 20. Can I get a thumbs up if that's okay? Oh, it's so hard, I know. I know. All right, so stay if you can. Do you guys have any questions for Kirk around this massive amount of work? Mike?
Quick, I promise. With regards to the indicators, the standards and the indicators, remind me where we would find the evidence that speak to each of those indicators.
What
Is
I'm
that just
asking you to
embedded
do is as you go through the goals,
Okay.
as you go through the goals, they're going to tell you.
Just pluck them out
You
from
just
there.
walk them straight to the evidence.
Okay, got it.
You walk them straight to the standards.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
So guys, if you have any questions about eval, that is just like clarifying or you need more information, funnel them to me and I will bring them to Kirk so that he's not inundated with that. And do so sooner than later because you probably won't get a lot of answers if you're asking, 9 o'clock at night before it's due. So your individual evaluation will be due to Sharon on the 15th. Okay, thank you for that, Kirk. So we're moving on here with finance and operations. And it looks like we have a few votes to take here based upon some donations and grants. So the first piece is the HQIM Network Support Grant.
Brevity is the goal.
Yes, brevity is the goal. Thanks, Ron.
So as you're aware, during the FY25 budget building process, we were notified that we did not receive the high quality instructional materials purchase grant, which would have provided some significant funding for our new elementary literacy instructional materials that will be purchased in short order. However, we were recently notified that our previously approved high quality instructional materials planning selection grant has been increased to include an additional $62,365 for the work that has been done in selecting the literacy curriculum this year, and will support the initial purchases and the onboarding of the new curriculum into the summer with regards to professional development for our staff. So I'd like to show some gratitude also towards the teaching and learning department for their ongoing pulse on state opportunities and diligence in pursuing these grant opportunities. They stayed very tied in to what may be available. This is something that we had before, and because that they've stayed tied in, when one door closed, another opened. So this provides us with some support and some also relief that will occur for our FY25 budget before we even open the books. So this is great.
Fantastic. So I'm going to look for a motion.
Well, that's interesting because Ms. Masson didn't provide a motion for this.
Oh, she did.
No. But if you need me to make
she did.
Where is it?
Is buried. So I'm
sorry. It was out of order. I didn't say.
You want to take it?
I was right,
Take it
yeah,
away.
yeah. I apologize. It was not in sequence of what I expected. So, Madam Chair, I move to accept the fiscal year 24 FCC 161 Evaluate and Select HQIM Network Support Grant dated May 8, 2024. Expenditure is presented in accordance with School Committee Policy DD.
I will second that. Any further discussion on accepting lots of money? Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Looks unanimous to me. Thank you again, guys, for that.
Yep.
That is fantastic news for
Great news.
our residents and our kids. All right, guys, on to the next matter here, and that is Chronic Absenteeism Recovery Initiative Family Engagement and Communication Grant.
Sure. So this grant is being submitted for approval in order to support our efforts in working with students dealing with school avoidance and supporting their families. As Dr. Boynton pointed out this evening, addressing chronic absences has been a focus in the district and certainly in the high school. Earlier this year, DESE made $10,000 per district available with really the only stipulation that you choose one of 3 pathways to work on chronic absenteeism, either implementing tracking and monitoring systems, which you already have, offering attendance recovery academies, which we really didn't necessarily need to do, and then the third, improving family engagement and communication focused on strengthening family-school partnerships to better support students. So we chose the family engagement pathway and intend to use the funding to have identified staff and teams participate in school avoidance professional development, form a team to create a protocol for our district to address school avoidance at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and we'll also have up to 60 slots available through that same training modules for parents to participate in those online modules if necessary and wanted into the future if those don't expire. So this is something that we can continue to offer to families as issues may come up with school avoidance. This work is going to be led by our nurse leader, Mariah Zwicker, and high school assistant principal, Dan Walker, beginning really as soon as this is over and starting and going into the summer and have that protocol ready for the fall.
Fantastic. I'm going to look for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to accept the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Chronic Absenteeism Recovery Initiative and Family Engagement and Communication Grant for expenditure as presented in accordance with School Committee Policy DD.
I will second that. Any discussion? We like money. Everybody in favor, raise your hand, please. Thank you very much for that. Oh, yeah, Mike.
No, that was a yes.
Okay, fantastic. Moving right along, we are now going to discuss the Luther Burbank donation, which I assume you also know about, Ross.
Yeah, without repeating the letter from Principal O'Shea, we've had a very generous anonymous donor come forward and donate $1,000 to support Luther Burbank Middle School students in their Great Road Musical Festival, which is coming up at the end of this month.
All right, a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the $1,000 donation to Luther Burbank Middle School from an anonymous donor to be used to defray the cost of students attending the Great Road Musical Festival, which will occur on May 24, 2024. Specifically, this donation is intended to help defray the cost of the trip for all students in the 7th and 8th grade band and wind ensemble who are attending.
I will second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Wonderful. On to our final item here, and that is Neshoba Regional High School donation.
Yep, so this is specifically a donation to our high school athletics department in the form of a automated external defibrillator, AED. So the Scholastic Sports Zone Foundation has delivered this, and we are looking to accept this is a donation. My initial and first reaction to this is it's great. And does it currently fit in with the training that we've had on our current AEDs, supplies, things like that? It's the exact same version of what we currently have at the high school. So this fits in perfectly, and you know, I don't think we could ever have enough AEDs within eyeshot of wherever our athletes or our visitors are. So this is continued good stuff for the athletic department.
Fantastic.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the donation of an automatic external defibrillator donated to the Neshoba Regional High School from the Scholastic Sports Zone Foundation.
I will second that. Any discussion?
Oh, one thing.
Yeah.
This is just what I'm going to say every single time. Wasn't it already accepted? Didn't it say it got April 30th that we already received?
It was delivered, but we can't do anything with it. We wouldn't open it. We wouldn't, yeah.
Because otherwise we just return it if we said no.
Correct. If it was, that would be correct. We would ask them to come back and pick it up.
I wasn't sure if it was already installed somewhere like the last.
No, it's not. But it was sort of. They stopped by and delivered it to Ms. Rich, and so yeah, this is where we're looking for the acceptance of it.
Wonderful.
It's a good point, procedurally.
Yeah. Thanks, Dana. All those in favor of accepting this donation? Wonderful. And thank you very much to that organization for doing so, and thank you, Ross, for your updates. So guys, I have an idea, and I'm wondering how you're feeling about it. I'm thinking that the subcommittee reports can perhaps wait, considering the next meeting is where all of the subcommittees are responsible for sharing out our goal acquisition. So how are we all feeling about that? Can I get a thumbs up if you're okay with foregoing? No subcommittees are going to die if we do that? Budget and warrant.
I'm just kidding. No. Next week.
All right, but before we go, I do have to say that we have two fantastic members who are definitely retiring, and this is going to be their last in-person meeting. So, although I was going to do this at your subcommittee report, without this, in lieu of subcommittee reports, I'm going to give this, and maybe we just pass it down the line, to Karen Devine, who we are so grateful. Thank you, Karen, for all of your leadership, especially with CPAC, and your knowledge around special education has been endlessly invaluable, and we're so grateful that you stepped up for your community and you did this for 3 years. So thanks, Karen.
Thank you. You're a wonderful committee to work with, that's for sure. So
we make it fun. And also to our friend Mike Horish, who is also retiring after 6 years on the committee. His endurance and his willingness to take on the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee and really work with Ross and the superintendent to make this a very transparent and accepted subject matter in our communities, making it known and kind of no longer murky
it's really done a great service to our community and to our communities, and we're forever grateful for you, Mike. And we wish you both the very best as you go off. Don't forget us. You know, there are always chairs in the back. Oh, we would love it. We would love it. With that, guys, I'm going to move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Thanks, guys.
Great job. Thank you, everyone, for the endurance tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt.